So I'm going to pray and then I'll introduce the panel to you all. We hope that we can have some questions as well as we meet together. So if you are able to put your questions in the chat, we will do our all to answer your questions. So come, Holy Spirit, come to inspire. Come to send us. As we share this conversation on pioneering, would you come and fall upon us? Come and speak into our hearts. In Jesus' name, amen. So I've asked the panel to briefly introduce themselves. Roy, are you happy to start?
Yeah, sure. Lovely to be with you folks. I'm Roy Searle. I live now back up in Northumberland. I'm one of the Baptist Union Pioneer Ambassadors. I was a founder of Northumbria Community, and I've been pioneering planting all of my ministry, which goes back nearly 40 years from an unchurched background. Lovely to be with you.
Thank you, Roy. Simon.
Hi, I'm another of the three Pioneer Ambassadors nationally. I run an organisation called River Tree, was previously pioneering a Fresh Expression of Church in rural Cambridgeshire, and then was a regional minister in the Eastern Baptist Association. I do some work with Fresh Expressions, the national ecumenical movement as well.
Ali, you're next on my beautiful wall of faces.
Sorry, I was just chatting to Leslie about changing a name. Hi, everyone. I am the third person who is a Pioneer Ambassador for Baptist Union. I'm a hands-on, on-the-ground pioneer in a new housing estate where I've been for well over a decade now. So I'm still doing that some of the time. With Penny Marsh, I founded the New Housing Hub, which has a vision to work together across denominations to share God's love in every new housing area. But actually, I've got a heart to share God's love in every area. So, you know, it's not exclusive to just that. I used to be a regional minister for pioneering in Southern Counties, but felt a call from God through a prophetic dream about 3 years ago to lay that down and live by faith. So now I'm doing all sorts of different projects and serving God in different ways and declaring how wonderful and faithful he is. So yeah, so that's me.
Hey, big amen to that. Carolyn.
Hi, I run a charity called Third Space Ministries, and our aim is to demonstrate the love of God in the third spaces of society. So sociologists talk about three spaces: work and home, and then the third spaces are places outside of work and home where people relax and switch off. So essentially the leisure industry. So we do chaplaincy and team mission in places such as gyms, nightclubs, strip clubs, the music industry, and try to spend time with churches, encouraging them to think a little bit outside the box.
Wonderful, thank you, Carolyn. Esther.
Hello, I am a trainee minister with BU, and I finished last year my course with the Light Project, so I've just done the foundation degree with them, and I am a Pioneer Town Centre chaplain in Lowestoft in Suffolk.
So good. Really pleased you can join us, Esther. Thank you. Hayley, welcome.
Hi, I'm Hayley. I'm one of the regional ministers for the South Wales Baptist Association, and I'm kind of mission enabler. I'm also, one of the other hats I wear is I'm the Embracing Missional Adventure representative on the Baptist Union core leadership team. And someone the other day described my ministry as on the edge. So I guess that means I fit with pioneers. So yeah, it's great to be with you this afternoon.
Very quick introduction from me. I describe myself as having a role of not fitting in. As a pioneer, I've always done things that really other people don't seem to get. But I love to set up new things and to bring the good news of Jesus to those that haven't got a clue about him. So I am one of the principals of the Light College. We train pioneers and evangelists all over the UK to go and make countless disciples of Jesus. That's our goal. I also work part-time as an artist, and it's a bivocational role that I have, bringing in income through the ministry of being an artist, as well as being principal of the Light College. Simon, you've agreed to start sharing some theological reflections really on pioneering in this time of lockdown. Over to you, my friend.
That sounds a bit heavy, whether you call them theological or not. But Chris asked me to share again a blog post that I put up early on in the lockdown last year around Ascension, where I said that Jesus prepared his disciples for the time that he was not going to be amongst them. And use the phrase distributed church. We often talk about gathered church and scattered church. But I asked the question, what would it look like to be a distributed church? And reflecting on Jesus' approach to discipleship, and a number of people have articulated it in different ways. The 3DM group of people have looked at the discipleship square, where it goes from I do, you watch, you do, I help, you do, no, I do, oh, here we go. I do, you watch, I do, you help, you do, I help, and then you do, I watch. And others have articulated it as MAWL, M-A-W-L, model, assist, watch, leave. And I was just sharing the fact that early on in lockdown, I saw so many ministers burning themselves out, feeling that they had to be the ones every day feeding their flock, whether that was a daily thought for the day or just feeling that everything was dependent upon them as a clergy, and reflecting that maybe we've created an unhealthy model of ministry where even in the Baptist church, where we believe in the priesthood of all believers, we have this quite centralized view of the church, that everything's down to us as a minister, and we create this relationship and expectation. The church expects us to have that role and want us often to have that role, and we as ministers can often fall into the trap of expecting that of ourselves and almost defining ourselves and our ministry by that need to be needed. And so I was just asking the question, what would it look like for us to be equipping the disciples, equipping the saints in our fellowship to go, to equip them, that we might put ourselves out of a job on a regular basis, sending them off to make relationships, develop relationships with their friends, the people they share their interests with, and being ministers in those places. And it's not exclusively a pioneering commission, but I do think it's something that is at the heart of pioneering, that it's about all of us being people who take Jesus into the places we go and see what emerges in those places. So I don't know, Chris, if that's too swift a rush through that, but I'm happy to sort of talk more. But what would it look like for us to be a distributed church, one rather than one that holds power and leadership and ministry at the center? What would it look like to send people with the opportunity to serve and to lead and to grow expressions of church where they're at amongst their friends?
I think that was quite theological.
Yeah, it was really good. Simon, I wonder if in the chat, could you share the link to that article? If you can.
It seems to have dropped off my blog post, off my website, so I need to put it back up. So I'll type the link of my blog, and then people can look later. It's not there at the moment.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Simon. So Hayley, what are your thoughts on pioneering in this lockdown time?
I guess that's, how long have I got? Chris. That's
we'll just give you a few minutes.
okay. Well, I will focus on digital pioneering then, if I may, just to hone in on the millennial cliche a bit more. But I think that is really important. A lot of us as churches and as people of faith have put stuff online, but there's been an absolute joy in actually talking about why we have hope. I don't know about you, but at the start of lockdown, there was a real community spirit, wasn't there? And that seems to have waned over a little while, actually. Well, it has in my community anyway. And so it's that how we've kept going is almost that pioneering element, because we've had a reason for the hope. Where everyone else's energies have drained, we've not. And so what that's looked like is about investing and listening online, actively listening online, asking how are people hurting at the moment, not jumping in with addressing the issues, but actively listening online. Also just giving reasons to follow Jesus online. It's I love this story. It's a story from kind of South Wales, a bit north from Cardiff. A guy just set up a Facebook page saying, and every day posted a reason for people to give Jesus a try. Just try and trust him. 36 people have come to faith.
Whoa, that's so good.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. And all it was a sentence every day on a Facebook page.
Beautiful.
I love that type of pioneering. It's simple. And I think for me, what I've learned in lockdown, in pioneering, in mission, is just going back to that simplicity of sharing Jesus. I make the mistake of complicating it. But I think for me, pioneering in lockdown, where I've seen really move, is through actively listening and keeping it simple. And that works in the digital platform really well, because if people reject you, you don't get to know about it. They just choose to read your post. So I just share that as an encouragement. That's what I'm seeing pioneering online. There's lots of other areas of privileged cafes on Twitter and posts on Insta, but I'll just leave it for that, as I've only got a few minutes.
Hayley, thank you so much. Esther, you're a very active pioneer. I've been to hang out with you. I've had the privilege of pioneering with you a bit on the streets, meeting people. How have you been able to do this stuff on lockdown?
Well, do you know what? It's been really interesting, and pick up on what Hayley said about social media, is that I run a town centre chaplaincy team, and so for the first lockdown you cannot act as a town centre chaplaincy team when the country's in lockdown. So we went entirely on social media, mainly Facebook, using our Facebook page and posting, I think initially 5 days a week, a live stream of a thought for the day, but really linking it to mental health and grounding it in actually what's going on that day, what's the news been, and just talking about how Jesus is relevant to exactly what is going on, which has just been amazing, and hundreds of people have listened, and it's just been beautiful to, when we have been allowed back out to walk down the street and have people go, oh, you're that woman on Facebook who talks about this or about that, which is brilliant. But the other thing, I think, going back to simplicity, has just been for us, when we have been able to be out, it's been just blessing people, just showing love in really simple ways. We live in a small town, so we decided to gift every independent shop in our high street a card and a present, and the response was just phenomenal. People are just blown away with, why would you bother to do that at this time? And so I think it's been blessing people really simply. It's not been big, just simple acts. And for me, it's been showing the relevance of Jesus to mental health and everyday situations has just been really powerful for people. So, yeah.
Bless you, Esther. That is so good to hear. Carolyn, with Third Space Ministries, how have you been able to pioneer in this season?
Yeah, it's obviously quite a challenge with most third spaces being closed and not being able to physically be present. Like others, we've done some things virtually. So we have adapted courses. So we usually do a course for women at the gym looking at issues of identity and self-esteem with sort of pamper treatments. So we adapted that and did that online, and we were amazed at the presence of God through the screen. It was incredible. So we did that. We created one of our team who worked with DJs. He created a meditation series during Advent, which went out on social media and on YouTube. And he used some of the people who aren't Christians that he works amongst to be involved in creating those as well, which was incredible. So that reached people. So we learned new things. We'd not done that before. But then the non-online stuff, we again really learned the importance of the gifts, the lavishness of love. So Ellie, who works with the women in strip clubs, she put together hampers, like really lovely, lavish hampers of beauty treatments and jewelry and notebooks and Bibles or Christian book of some kind, and packaged all of those up and sent those off. She also had someone who painted prophetic pictures for the women and packaged those off and sent those. And the response that we've had from the women, we prayed over all of those, and it really was like an unlocking for them in receiving God's love through this gift. And then we've been doing like Zoom coffee mornings, and then just other one-to-ones. So I think it's prompted us to be far more intentional, and lots of picking up the phone, because not everybody feels comfortable with Zoom. So we've just been on the phone a lot to people, or going for walks with people. And I do feel that those relationships have gone deeper. And I think what I feel we've really learned through this has been the importance of relationships. So we as an organisation are very relational and incarnational in the way that we do things. And it can be week in, week out, sitting with people, doing the journey with them, doing coffee times with them and all of that. Sometimes you can think, gosh, are we getting anywhere here? But when times like this hit, it was just like, boom, we'd all got everybody's phone numbers, they'd got access to us. Straight away, they knew that they felt that they could trust us and feel safe with us. So I think the investment of taking the time to build the relationships over the months and years has really paid off now. And we're really seeing some beautiful fruit that's come from those relationships. So that's been a really great key thing that God's taught us through this.
Carolyn, as you're talking, my faith is rising. It's so good to hear these stories of connecting with people, even in this difficult time. We're going to hear from Ali and Roy, and as they share some thoughts about pioneering in this lockdown time, can I encourage you to write any questions that you want to ask the panel? You can ask us generally, or if you want to ask Hayley or Simon, Esther, Ali, Carolyn, or Roy, or myself, you can ask a direct question. So Ali, let's hear from you, and then we'll hear from you, Roy.
I guess for me, my reflections when we went into lockdown was the difference between being a pioneer and how I saw what church was and what I was seeing in maybe the more established community, church community, where it felt like church, the gathering was so central to being church for the more established community. And although we do gather as church, that's probably not the central thing of what we do. And one of the things I've been reflecting on is from John 4 with Jesus's encounter with the woman at the well, and how he's in a very everyday domestic situation with that woman. He's in her context by the well, just doing an everyday thing. And in that moment, she has a massive revelation of who the Messiah is. This isn't some massive church gathering, as we would call it now. This was a domestic situation of relationship, like Carolyn and others have been saying. And so for me, I've been thinking, you know, what does it mean to be church? What does it, which is always my question as a pioneer, not just in lockdown. That's sort of where my heart is. I want to be church with those beyond the church. So what does that look like? What does it mean to worship in spirit and truth, even when we're not gathering? And so for me, I've just seen that worship in spirit and truth, whether it be just passing someone on the street during, you know, our allowed exercise time during the first lockdown, where someone said that they were anxious, and I just prayed that they've never been to any gathering we've done, but I've prayed before, and I just prayed for the Spirit to come upon her, and it did. You know, that's church for me. That's worshipping in spirit and truth. Our food sharing has been, even though it's been the whole community, Christians or not Christians, but it's been about, you know, having all things in common, and it's been about trying to listen to God's prophetic word for the people. Like somebody else said about praying over the things that are going out. And so it's not been just about keeping people alive, but how do we bless people? And because it's coming from the community, it's in my house, it's all very informal, mine and my co-minister Owen, in our houses. And so we have all different food. So for instance, one time I had one lot of marmalade, and so I pray over it. Lord, which of the people would really just be blessed by having some marmalade? And maybe it's a silly prayer, but I believe God speaks prophetically into all things. So I felt like it should go to a particular family, and I put it with that. And we went off and we delivered, and I meet people on the doorstep while I'm delivering and everything. And later I got a message from this particular family who'd had the marmalade, and thanks so much for the food. And they said, amazing that there was marmalade. My kids have never tasted marmalade, and they were watching the Paddington film today. And after it, I was able to make them some marmalade sandwiches.
That's so good.
I know, she's got 4 small children, and they were able to, one older child and 3 small ones. They were able to have this activity of having marmalade sandwiches. And I said to her, do you know, I prayed over that. She's not a Christian or anything. I just said, I prayed over it, and I thought you should have the marmalade. And this prophetic word over the food has just come again and again and again. And, you know, I just think that is worshipping God in spirit and in truth. We're not gathering, but we're having those kind of encounters with people. We had a Hindu family in the area want to do Bible story time online. So I've had Hindus, Christians, and people of no faith joining for that. And all sorts of other stuff. We've done a virtual Pamper night. Other people have said that, and all kinds of other things. But what I really am grasping is that being church isn't what we do when we gather necessarily. It is that as well. But being church in our communities is worshipping in spirit and in truth with the ones and the twos. And in those times, God, if we're open to his Spirit, can still give the revelation of who the Messiah is, and we can encounter him. So that's been my sort of way that I've brought together kind of pioneering lockdown.
You know what? If we were in a room together, all together, I'd be going, woohoo! Yeah, come on! I love it. Paddington pioneering going on there. Beautiful. Ali, I love that. Roy, over to you, my friend.
Thank you. I had to pray about marmalade because the online shopping delivered lime marmalade as opposed to dark Seville. So I had to pray over marmalade. What have I been doing? Most of my role now is, as an older man, is mentoring, training, writing and advocating. But it is great to be part back here in Northumberland of a church that is reimagining, or to use the N word, recalibrating what church is in a changing culture. For me, I think this is a time I've spent my period encouraging, advocating, supporting and affirming pioneers, because I think for such a time as this, in the words of the Apple advert, here's to the crazy ones, for the ones that don't fit, that actually our time has come. It won't lead to greater understanding, but it might lead to greater contribution in whatever context we face ourselves. I think I want to preface what I'm sharing briefly, Chris, with we need to face the reality that the world is changing. There is no going back to the normal. And in large measure, I don't want to go back to normal because there were lots of things that were wrong and unjust about the world as was. I think this is a time for seeking God, listening, And my question, Ali and I have engaging, stimulating conversations. She's asking what the church looks like. For me, the church is not irrelevant by any means, but it's not my starting point. I want to ask, what is the gospel? What does the gospel look like? And then in the light of that, what does that represent for churches and missional communities? I think as pioneers, we're privileged to see the problems and challenges we face as great opportunities. I think we're in a liminal place, we're in an exile place, we're in an uncertain place, and it's time for us to really lean in on God and listen to his heartbeat for his world, discern what the Spirit of God is doing in our neighborhoods. We've been turfed out. I sense that the Spirit of God has turfed the church out into the world. With pioneer colleagues of other denominations, there was a word given in June last year about the stabilizers have been taken off the bike. And for many churches, their stabilizers are a church building and a worship gathering, and that's gone. And we've got to learn how to ride in a different way and be church in a different way. I think it's a great opportunity for us as pioneers to in some ways lead the way about empowering believers, the priesthood of all believers, empowering believers where God has called each one to be. And I think, you know, there's a lot of conversation in this conference about APEST. There's a real opportunity. I believe pioneers can be found in all 5 of those ministries, but there's a real opportunity for the apostolic and the prophetic and the evangelist to come to the fore at a time like this. Because Christendom is, for me, pandemic has reminded us that we're in a post-Christendom, emerging post-Christendom world. And it's time we woke up to that reality. Because when I can totter around in my car here in Alnwick because there's no snow. The world has changed up on the hills and in the moors, and my vehicle is useless. I need an off-road, a 4-wheel drive. I need a Land Rover. We've tried to do church and communicate the gospel to a world that has changed, and we've seen little fruit. So I think there's great opportunities in the changes that are coming. I think it is time to reimagine, to refocus our priorities on God. What does the good news mean in a changing world? What does the good news mean for 3 generations of people who have little, if no, affiliation to church whatsoever? How can we rediscover our priorities on really seeking God? I'm glad that loads of programs and strategies have gone to the wall, because actually they haven't delivered what they've promised. Here's an opportunity for us to actually be in the places where God wants us, where we're having to be dependent upon him and his Spirit in amazing, creative, dynamic ways. It's a call to be more incarnational. I think the days of attractional are numbered. Here's a chance for pioneers to not only be engaged in the cutting edge of like reimagining church, but in issues of justice, in issues of being good news to the poor, in engaging with unbelievers, being in the connectivity with the world, in arts, education, the workplace, debating. Dave's online with us, Dave Gregory, you know, engaging with the scientific community, bringing a theological perspective to those conversations about what the future of society leads. Third Space is a phenomenally opportunity as well as challenge to the church. I've been locked down like most of us, but I think there's great opportunities. I am of a certain age, so I tend to be more Facebook than any of the other social media, because that's my age category. But to actually engage in the conversations, to moderate, to feed things in, to encourage people to pray and then message people on Facebook. And it's a bit like your story, Ali, with the marmalade, you know, give over every opportunity to God. Most Wednesdays for me now, I have the luxury of having an intentional day of prayer. And out of that day of prayer, I've been able to message hundreds of people over the last 15 months, just with sharing something. And I think was it you, Esther, was saying, actually, you can share stuff. And if people really don't like you and they don't like what you're saying, well, it's no hassle. But it's amazing in the hands of a creative God what those hunches can lead to. And finally, Chris, I think, you know, we are called to be creators of the future, you know, and get engaged in the forums that are shaping tomorrow, not just the Christian forums, but the secular forums that are thinking about what life and society means, so that we can shape the future out of the challenges and opportunities of the present. And finally, to be like the Celts, who God raised up a movement of Holy Spirit inspired people who are passionate about God and his good news in a time when the world was changing. The Roman Empire was falling apart. The United States is falling apart. It's fractured. China is emerging as the major superpower. Let's be a people like the Celts, who were people of blessing and benediction. And we can just bless people. And the fruit of just blessing people, either it be by marmalade or messages, can make great differences. And pioneers, we should be at the forefront of that stuff.
Come on, Roy. That is so good. Thank you. We're going to hear from Esther about pioneering as a town centre chaplain. How did you manage to do that, Esther? And then Hayley, could you jump in and address the question that you put on, or rather about Gen Z, Gen Y, and that would be great. So Esther and then Hayley.
Yeah, so I blame Chris and God together for me becoming a town centre chaplain. So yeah, so Chris inspired me because he was doing it already in Peterborough with a team, and I went to visit, and it was like God went, you need to do something like that in your town. You don't just copy Chris, you need to work out what it would look like in Lowestoft. My town is sort of 70,000 people, most easterly town. Nobody really goes there. You sort of, unless you live in a city and you want to go to the beach on holiday. And we have a really small declining town centre, like a lot of places. But sort of the process that I went through, I guess, was pitching the idea to my minister, who was very supportive initially. I would like to go out and do some kind of introducing people to Jesus in the street. I don't want to be a street evangelist, because that's annoying and irrelevant to people and is like a clanging cymbal in their ears. But we want to share love and we want to pray. So I then did a process of going around most of the churches in the town and discovered that God was speaking to them about that as well, which was brilliant and just confirmed it. So we got together. Well, there's now 5 churches we partner across denominations to run the chaplaincy team. But one of our first steps, I suppose it would be to identify someone of peace in the power structures of the council and social services in Lowestoft. And we have this really key individual who isn't a Christian, but for some reason loves the churches. God uses him to open up opportunities for the churches. So I went to him and basically presented the concept of a chaplaincy team under the well-being. We have a mental health ambassador in Lowestoft, so we have the 5 steps to well-being. And so we went and said, look, spiritual well-being is really integral to people's mental health, and which they had no qualms with whatsoever. And Lowestoft has statistically worse mental health than significant parts of the country, and there's a desperate attempt to support people in any way. So once they could see that we were wanting similar things to them, sorry, my children are now coming through screaming my name. Go that way, talk to Dad. Okay, we will. Sorry, that's my 6-year-old. Yeah, once they realized that we weren't going out to force Jesus upon people and to pull people kicking and screaming into our churches, but to meet people where they were and to listen to them and to talk to them and to respond to them. And yes, to talk spiritual matters if people wanted to talk spiritual matters, then we haven't had any objection. I went and met the head of the police service in the town and talked to her and explained it to her. I went and met the people that oversee the vision for the town centre. I didn't have to ask permission from any of them, because you don't need to do something in the town centre, but I wanted their support as much as possible. And sorry, just looking at the comments. And And actually what's happened is I'm now invited as a town centre chaplain to intervention meetings for some of the most vulnerable people in the town, because they respect what we're trying to do, and we work alongside the PCSO in the town centre. So basically God inspired it. We found a person of peace within the organisations, and it's been easy to just be able to be out and to bless people, and we sort of set up a tent and chairs, and we give out gifts, and sometimes we paint, and we visit all the independent shops. We know all the shop owners now, and mostly we are praying for people, listening to people, and the prophetic has been an amazing part of it. Offering hand massage in the street and God just giving you words for people, finding that right person to give that gift to, just having that word of knowledge for in a painting for somebody has just been phenomenal. So
wonderful, Esther.
Yeah.
You know what, we could unpack that all day. Finding a person of peace, the role of the Spirit in pioneering. So good. Hayley, I wonder whether you could expand a little bit about what you meant by the defining of the culture. It was in the question box. Wonderful question.
Yeah, no, it was just as Roy was speaking, as always when Roy speaks, that you're inspired, aren't you? And Roy was mentioning about that redefining, recalibrating the church, and I just wanted to put in there, millennials, Gen Z have already redefined the world that they want to live in. They've already said we don't want injustice anymore. We're not going to ruin our planet. They've already said that they want to work on a different time scale and not have geography as a barrier, but do stuff online and listen to the other voice. They've already redefined that, and they redefined that a long time ago. Mm-hmm. And the church has now realised that the digital world is just as valid as the physical world. And
wow, that's a biggie, isn't it?
It is. And what we need to do is not replicate what we used to do on buildings online. But
Amen.
We're being welcomed into their space. Often as pioneers, even as traditional churches, this isn't a space we know very well. And so we're the guest. But in being the guest, we kind of are allowing the others to speak first and then bring Jesus in. And so it's just that different dynamic that we now shift, which is really exciting, because we can go to a generation, 2 generations of people and say, this world you're defining is brilliant, and we see the Holy Spirit in it. And let us introduce you to Jesus. And just as Roy was speaking, I just thought that was a point to echo.
That's so good. Roy, go on.
Can I just make a plea for those who are of a certain age, baby boomers like me, that just as we have to embrace the opportunity and be more guest than host in the digital era, the same is true with the younger generations. We need to step back. The problem with the baby boomer generation is they won't let go of control. And I think it's a real challenge for us to let go, to be led by younger generations.
Wow.
To fail to do that is to miss the opportunity of the new thing that God is doing among us. This new world that is being redefined by youth, the power structures are often still held with the older generations. Yeah. And I think we need to be modeling that in our churches, communities, associations and denominations.
Can I add to that, Chris? I'll just say there's an important word, legacy, and a number of our churches are really challenged at this time and may well be closing. And I think, what would it look like for those churches to die well, to give, not just to let go, but to give and actively and generously resource and release resources for the next generation of church? What would it look like for us to do that? And I think that's a challenge to us, because we hold on to things really tightly. But what would it look like to let go and actively and generously release the resources that we've got for a mission to the next generation?
Simon, I believe like the Lord really spoke to you about that. It was a real sense of a prophetic sense of the buildings and resources that are closed and not being used, probably won't be used, to be released into New Kingdom resources. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, and I have practical experience. When I was pioneering a Fresh Expression of Church outside Cambridge, we ended up looking after a chapel down the road that was down to 3 people, and they were desperately clinging on. And then suddenly they had a letter from the council saying this derelict caretaker's cottage at the end, they were going to have to pay 150% council tax for it. And it was a straw that broke the camel's back. But because we had a relationship with them, over a period of a number of years, us helping them with an occasional evening service, they ended up agreeing to sell that chapel, which enabled a manse to be bought for the new thing that we've been doing. I've seen it in practice, and I've seen how it's still a painful process for churches to go through that that closure and that ending. But they were so blessed by seeing new beginnings as a consequence of that ending, rather than just a door being closed and that being the end of it.
Wonderful, thank you. Before I've asked Ali if she would answer Nigel's question. I hope that's all right, Ali. But before we do, Sandra asked, where are the spaces and the places where pioneers can meet? Simon, I know you are very much involved in pioneers across the body of Christ, as are you, Roy. But what places would you say, if I can just say, pioneers meeting in the Light Collective? We have a collective that meets monthly. It is for past students, but it's for people who want to learn how to pioneer and who would think in similar ways to how we long to see people become followers of Jesus. So if you want to join the Light Collective, you are very welcome to do so. And just get in touch with me and I can send you the details. Simon, any more thoughts on places and any other panel?
So quickly, so as Pioneer Ambassadors, we're developing a roundtable, and there are representative of pioneers in each of the 13 Baptist associations across England and Wales. So going to the Baptist Union website and sending an email to one of us, we'll be able to put people in touch with those who are gathering pioneers in their area. Fresh Expressions, the ecumenical organisation that I'm part of, we have regular gatherings, and again, freshexpressions.org.uk will get you to more information about that.
I think just say, Chris, connectivity is really important, and for some pioneers you have to find your own connectivity with other pioneers and people engaged in Fresh Expressions, but do so, because otherwise my observation is we get picked off. We need to be standing together, we need to be working collaboratively.
Yeah.
And the likes for you, Sandra, with the vision of the house of prayer, drop me a line to connect with other people who have pioneered other houses of prayer. That there's great, lovely informal networks, more than people realize, but we do need to stay together, to stand together.
Amen to that. Any more to add on the belonging as a pioneer, or how do you connect? Okay. Ali, are you happy to answer the question about, Nigel's question? Great.
Yeah, answer Nigel's question, and if I can be cheeky, I might make a mention to Graham's question earlier on as well.
Yeah.
So Nigel's asking what of the old ways to be carried forward and what can be left behind. And I guess that's what I've been kind of engaging with for the last 12 years or so of church more generally, not just in the lockdown. So for me, it's about what our underlying values are. So that's really the heart of what we are. And I won't tell you them all, but just to give you a few examples, say, called to bless, for instance, laying down our lives for the community as followers of Jesus, being authentic, not perfect, nurturing faith. Those kind of things are some of our underlying values. And those are the things that we take forward. And I don't think it really matters whether your context is online or whether it's in a local, new housing community, if it's on an estate or in a village or whatever. the things that we're taking forward are those things that are really central to who we are and what God's called us to. So that first week when the churches stopped being able to gather at the start of the last lockdown, and I could see on social media so many churches kind of going, what are we going to do now? We can't meet. And I was just thinking, well, that's neither here nor there. That's not the central thing about who we are. The central thing about who we are is what God's called us to be. So we continue to just, you know, the call to bless and the call to lay down our lives. It was just, what does that look like in this new place and in this new way? So I guess for me, what I would want to see left behind is our desire to do particular things. And what I want to see carried forward is a real embodiment of being a certain thing and being that person and that embodiment of Christ that we're called to, in whatever it looks like, whether we're the underground church or the digital church or the village church, or even if we meet traditionally, it doesn't matter. But it's about, are we being Christ-like, and are we holding on to those values, not are we holding on to these particular activities that we do.
Come
that
on.
feels really important. And I guess I'm going to just integrate in what Graham's question was as well. Another thing that I've been really challenged with, and what we need to leave behind, is I think that, well, we need to move forward into being really functionally theist people. By that I mean there are things that sometimes I've done, and you're maybe much more holy than me. There are things I've done that I could have done as a non-Christian. So I could do our food sharing scheme, our relational thing. I could do that as a non-Christian, and that's great. Keeping people alive and giving them food is a good thing. But I really feel that God calls us not just to keep people alive and to administer to the physical need. Let's do that. I'm not saying we don't. Let's definitely do that and keep people alive and minister to their physical needs. But I want God to be right at the center of that. I don't want it to be I don't want someone in my local community who's not a Christian to be able to take over what I'm doing in terms of feeding people and do it exactly the same way. I want what we're doing to be something that God is right at the center of. And he says, he says, feed the sick and be there with the hungry and the poor and all of that. And we do that. But we want God to be speaking right into the midst in his prophetic word and pouring his spirit out on people. And so the thing I want to leave behind is us being functionally atheist in some of the things that we do. Well, some of the things I do, I can't judge you guys. I can only speak for myself. I need to move away from things that are functionally atheist. And I need to move into saying everything I do has got to center around the fact of who God is and function in a really godly theist way.
Ali, that is so good. My goodness, thank you.
That's you.
Whew, you bless me. Absolutely wonderful. Could we have some more questions, please? So if you're listening and you're thinking, I just need to get my head around this, please do answer. Please do ask some questions and we will seek to answer them. Carolyn, over to you, my friend.
Yeah, I was just going to pick up on Graham's question about what is the key to breakthrough. And just with highlighting again what Ali said about bringing the distinctiveness, I think we've all learned that there's no way that Christians have the monopoly on kindness. And it's so often that other faiths or atheists have got there before us in certain situations. And we should never assume that. And that comes back to being the guest, not the host, that we're not the ones that have got it all together and no one else has got what we've got in that sense. So being able to bring a distinctiveness to what we do. But also I would just sort of say, what do you mean by breakthrough? I think we've got lots of questions to ask about what we mean by defining success. What is it that we mean? If we are measuring, so often we are measuring in ways, numerical ways. I know for us as a charity, when we have to report back to trusts who've given us grants, it can be so hard because, or even to our supporters, because, you know, the thing is, they want to know how many people have become Christians. And so we actually went through a whole process as a team of creating an impact measurement tool that actually, there's lots of stuff that we can't qualify in the same way that people are wanting that. So for us, that sense of success is seeing and breakthrough is seeing a woman come to grips with her own self-esteem and confidence in a way that she hasn't done for 30 years because of what's happened in her life. And so I think we need to perhaps re-examine some of our language and our expectations, and have the patience as well. I mean, we prayer walked Soho for 18 months before a door opened. And I think it is just that week in, week out, being persistent and patient. And as I said with the thing about relationships right at the start, is that sometimes you can feel that the breakthrough isn't there, but then when a crisis comes, you think, oh, actually, that it was worth investing in what didn't appear like breakthrough at the time. So I think language about how we measure stuff, how we qualify stuff as breakthrough, as pioneers, we could become very, very despondent if we did not see the success that the world expects of us, or that our churches expect of us. But I think we need to start to view things with different eyes. And yeah, prayer, really, really persisting in that. Yeah, we've really learned that about the sort of long journey of prayer over lots of our projects.
Wonderful. Thank you, Caroline. Great insights. Roy, over to you, and then we'll address Graham's question, if that's okay. Those on the panel, just have a look at it. And
sure, Chris, it actually touches on Graham's question and Nigel's from Dereham about what do we keep, what do we retain. I think we retain certain things like the commitment to make disciples, but we need to learn how to do it differently. My observation of some church leaderships is that actually a lot of church leaders have seized the opportunity to be more facilitators than the drivers and the leaders of things. So, you know, this is all to do with the empowering of the people of God. I think the other thing, we're going to, both in the present and in the future, we're going to inherit with global recession, double-dip recession, massive unemployment, civil unrest, the disparity between wealth and poverty. We're going to be living in a culture of civil unrest. And here's an opportunity for the church to really practice koinonia, practice community, practice love of God, practice love of neighbor. But like all things, we're going to have to do it differently. And I think, you know, for Graham's question about, you know, that there is within all of us a desire to have something which is familiar, secure. But I think we can encourage established inherited churches, to coin a phrase from Schaeffer, Francis Schaeffer from years ago. If you have a few pilot plants, here in Alnwick, they've got 5 or 6 missional communities running alongside established inherited church model. And as people see the fruit of those missional communities, which is not measured in terms of bums on seats, which is not possible anyway, but is measured, you know, Jesus said, here's the Lord's Prayer, your kingdom come. He didn't say, your congregation come. He said, your kingdom come here on earth as in heaven. That has to be one of the criteria by which we measure whether the Spirit of God is at work. And so these 5 or 6 missional communities in care homes, in what was the Coffee, in Messy Church, they've become seeds of transformation for the inherited church that is kind of saying, let's go back to normal. Wouldn't it be good when we all get back to normal? Yeah, thank you.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. We've got a little bit more time before we'll pray for you. I'd love us to pray for your pioneering. You've come along as pioneers. I recognise so many faces that I recognise on the screen in front of me. Beautiful faces. And I'd love to pray for your pioneering. Simon.
Yeah, I was just responding to Gert asked a question a while back and it sort of got lost in the chat about where do we find pioneers? And I think I would answer that in 2 ways. One, there is a number of ministers, people who are being raised up for ordained Baptist ministry who have a pioneering heart, a pioneering mindset. And if you've got resources as a church and you want to invest in new things, and they're, you know, then talk to us as pioneer ambassadors and we'll try and put you in touch with those people. But the second way to answer that question would be, this is all about equipping the saints to be ministers where they're at. And I would encourage rather than looking to somebody else to say, what equipping can I find to become a pioneer where I am? And there's a number of resources to do that. One I'm involved in is an app called Godsend, FX Godsend, if you look for that in the App Store or Google Play, and it's a free app that takes you through the process of going to a group of people, a community, building relationships, and seeing what sort of church emerges there as you engage in discipleship. And yeah, don't
Wonderful.
look elsewhere, but go for it yourself as well.
Can I give some context to where the question is coming from, really? Is that okay?
Yeah, go for it.
I mean, I'm what now is called an interim minister, and I'm working with 3 different churches. And really, they're all older congregations. They have money. One has got a building, 2 haven't got buildings at all. And in some sense, they come to the point where they realize they almost have to have a restart.
Yeah.
And so what they are looking for, because the resources aren't within their own community, is for allowing that to happen in their context. And then they are willing to, there's certainly the financial resources and any support that they can offer. Often with smaller churches, older congregations, is the reticence is that the older people want to minister. So I will actually be still in the background, doing all the ministerial stuff, which I've been doing for 28 years or so. But that would actually set somebody free to set up a new project in quite a different context. And that's really where the question is coming from, really.
Gert, you're not alone, by the way. Lots of people do ask the very question you are asking of where do you find pioneers. Ali?
Just want to encourage you, Gert, really. Thank you for sharing that. I'll just give you a quick example. Down on the south coast, when I was a regional minister for Southern Counties, there was a church, sounds very similar to what you're describing. And they had a heart for this community, but they were all older people. The youngest one was 79, and they all went up from there. They had some money, but they didn't feel like they would be pioneering themselves. And through working with that church, we have managed, I say we, in my former job as a regional minister, I called a guy in his 30s with his wife and 2 young kids, and through that wonderful church who was saying, what is God calling us to do? Their legacy was that they sold their manse, they gave that money so that this pioneer and his family could move in a new area. And he is now doing loads, well, him and his wife and the family, but he's the pioneer in that particular situation, is doing all kinds of things through surfing and on new housing, and kind of spoke with this older church, and he's sort of like a grandchild to them. So he's keeping in touch and saying things, and they love it. They're getting the feedback and all of that, but they're not about to go surfing or meet with these guys beyond the church. It's just not where they're at in life. And I think one of the things that I sort of have felt like, and I know that Simon and Roy are the same, and probably others on here, I've sort of felt like over the years of being a particularly regional minister, but since as well now, that I've heard about situations that are looking for a pioneer, and then you pray into it, and out of the blue someone gets in touch and say, I feel like God might be calling me to this. And that's what happened in that church. There was this church that wanted to do it, and someone got in touch and said, I feel like God's calling us sort of down to about the sort of south kind of area, maybe south coast. And I sort of feel like a bit of a pioneer dating agency, putting some pioneers together with these churches. And I can't do that on my own. That is the work of the Spirit. But I would just say, if you've got things like this, get in touch. Or if you're a pioneer who thinks God is saying something, get in touch with one of us, or your regional minister for mission and pioneering, whoever it is, and just let's pray into it. And we trust God that he is going to bring together the pioneers and the places, the resourcing, and the people with the vision. And I think this is a God thing, and he is doing this. We can't manufacture it ourselves, but I think God is doing amazing things. Right, that's me. I'm going to shut up or I get too passionate, and Roy's getting...
Ali, love it. Just Roy, and then Hayley, and then we'll pray.
Yeah, can I just encourage us, if we are pioneers, rather than to be prophetic irritants and nuisances in our churches, to bring positive, prophetic and apostolic contributions to bear, And that will help to change the culture and engender greater affirmation, welcoming, honoring, and just recognition of the pioneers that God is raising up among us. As a Baptist denomination, we have often in the past missed out. I train loads of pioneers who began life in Baptist churches who've opted in other places for lack of recognition. Let's start through Fresh Streams and other movements to just be incredibly positive and encouraging, and then we'll see a rising tide of more pioneering that is good news for the kingdom. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Roy. I think just an encouragement on that and some practical advice. Often, you know, sometimes pioneers get a bad rap for dissing the established church, but the established church often pay us. So it's good to keep them. But in order to kind of, I would say communication is key. So if you have an established church that are wanting to go back to normal, once whatever normal is, once we can, post-COVID, almost do that, but do it alongside the pioneering thing, and then constantly communicate what you're doing. Share the good news stories. In my previous context in the church, we had a very traditional congregation, and then we had over 20 baptisms in a year, and the traditional congregation didn't understand why they weren't bums on seats. So we just had to communicate how they came to faith, how they were living out their faith. And then the really fascinating thing, as Roy said, the people that were baptized, because they came to faith in a non-traditional context, they were discipling in a non-traditional context. And so it does create, so I know it's frustrating, and I know there's a temptation to get angry, but I would say the communication of sharing the good news stories of what's happening at Messy Church, what's happening when the new family move into the estate, what's happening online, sharing all those in the traditional church, because my experience is traditional church love hearing people come to know Jesus. They don't, you know, regardless of whether they sing hymns, do liturgy or not, they want to pass on the love of God. They just don't know how sometimes. So share the good news stories, and it will happen over time.
Wonderful, Hayley. Thank you. Simon's put a link for the 100 missional stories that have been going out. Thank you for that, Simon. Let's pause before we pray.
Chris, can I just ask, are those stories now complete? 100 are there, or are you still looking for more to put in those 100 stories?
It's still looking for more. We've got 3 months left, so we're up to about 70. So we've got 30 spaces left. If you've got a story to tell, get in touch.
We could always do 101, Neil, for you, buddy.
Oh, I've got a story, and I will. Cheers, thanks.
I love it. Thank you, Neil. So just before we come to pray, I would love the panel to bless you. It's just 5 minutes, guys, but if we can pray over these beautiful people who have joined us. So come, Holy Spirit. I want to start by saying those of you who have come along today and have heard some of the stories and have said in yourself, I wish, if only. I want to ask for the pioneering gifts that you have got, for you to walk in them. For those of you who feel that you may be doing the wrong thing, come, Holy Spirit, and enable these sisters and brothers in front of me to do the right thing. For those who are predominantly pastors and teachers, I ask for those who are feeling that they need to do more of the prophetic. Come, Holy Spirit, and help them to step out. For those who long to pioneer and to do new, come, Holy Spirit. Feel free to pray, guys, over these people.
Lord, forgive us when we try and do this in our own strength and our own way with our own good ideas. And I know looking around this screen, we have hundreds of good ideas, but Lord, we lay those down before you now. We lay down our agenda, the things we want to do, all of the stuff that we think we know best about. We lay it down before you. Lord, may we only pick up those things that you really want us to pick up. Lord, we long to just join in with your mission and your way. Father, refill us. Release, as Chris has said, in us your prophetic gifts. Give us discernment and wisdom. And Lord, I pray that we would really embrace discipleship of laying down our lives, laying down our selfish ways, our agenda, that we may see your kingdom come. Help us, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.
Father, I pray for any here that have had those promptings from your Spirit to do something, but have hesitated because they don't know what the plan is. Father, in pioneering, it's about taking the first step and then waiting to see what you reveal for the next step and then the next step. And I just pray for any that have been hesitating, that they would stop hesitating and do the first thing that you put in front of them to do, prayerfully and respectfully for the people that they're trying to reach. But Lord, just taking that first step, I pray that you would enable them to do that for your glory.
Amen. We have to be candles between hope and despair, faith and doubt, life and death, all the opposites. And if our life means anything, if what we do goes beyond the church walls and does some good, it is somehow by being here at peace, we help the world with what it cannot understand. Lord, help us to be breakers of new ground for your kingdom. Help us in pioneering to bring hope where there is despair, peace where there is anxiety, light where there is darkness. Lord, help us to be, in the vulnerability and brokenness of our lives, channels through which the light and love and compassion of Jesus flows. Break new ground, we pray, for your kingdom. And bless sisters and brothers, partners in the gospel. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Roy, thank you. Just as we're praying, the prophetic and the pressure of this season seems to be sharpening up the prophetic. If that's something that has resonated with you, if you listen to the Marmalade stories and the other wonderful stories that we've heard, I want to encourage you to practice the prophetic. So would you please let someone know what you think God wants them to know? Okay. Bless you. Thank you so much for joining. Oh, the second thing was creativity. I looked at Patricia. I think you looked like you were painting, but you weren't. But it reminded me of the role of creativity in this season for pioneering. So if you are one who longs to do more in letting others know of Jesus using the arts, can I just encourage you to go for it? It feels like this is a season of just doing new creative things. Thank you for joining us. Bless you, everyone.